90s gamers of Reddit, what was a problem about it back then that modern gamers won't understand? Trying to get the drivers to work on your 3.11 Win95 setup before automatic driver detection and download was a thing. So effing painful. When gameplay speed was based on CPU speed, a fast computer might be too fast to play a game. We had a turbo button on our Gateway 486 that let you swap to a lower CPU speed to make certain DOS games playable. Writing down a 72-character password to save your progress, and the developer uses a fancy font so some numbers and letters look alike. This is the only way to save your game, and if you get it wrong, sorry about your luck. I'm looking at you, Golden Sun. Not even a 90s game, but they pulled this to the extreme. You sat wherever the cord on the controller would let you play from. My couch was too far away, so I played on the floor a lot as a kid. Asking your parents to use the dial-up internet so you can download a shareware demo of a game. It says it should only take a half hour. No, I'm expecting so and so to call. Okay. Or someone picking up the phone and nuking the connection and download. Pause game. Turn mouse over. Click off cover. Remove ball and clean. Clean rollers. Reinsert ball. And cover. Continue game. I used to like trying to get the fluff off the mouse ball in one strip without it breaking. Added some fun and jeopardy to the cleaning process. Anecdote. In 1992 I bought a Star Trek computer adventure game. It was similar to Sierra games of the day. It came on 5.25 inches floppy disks. I don't remember how many, but it was a big game for the time, so it was several disks. Long story short, after several hours of trying I couldn't get the game to install onto my 386SX 25MHz PC. I ended up calling their tech support and spoke to a guy on the phone. He was technically knowledgeable, and judging by his accent he was in the same country that I was. He determined that one of my floppy disks must be faulty. He was going to replace the entire game for me, but in order to do that, he needed me to cut the first disk in half with scissors and mail it to them in an envelope. This would apparently prove that I was legit and not just trying to scam a free copy of the game. I did that, and a couple of weeks later I had a new copy of the game in the mail. It worked fine this time. So, in 1992, actually useful customer service from a game company, although it was slow and convoluted as heck. These days I would have just refunded the game to my Steam wallet without a second thought, even though I had to use the postal service and wait 4 weeks in 1992. I can't imagine trying to frick around with a game company's phone support these days. It would be a nightmare, if it were even possible at all. Your parents bought you a console and games, but didn't know you needed a memory card, so you just played the beginning of every game for a month. Played the raid on the first Mako reactor in FF7 about 20 times before I got a memory card, lol. Split screen cheating was a constant complaint when I was still living at home. Once I got to college was about the time Halo CE came out, and we just expected that if you couldn't follow 4 screens at once, tough crap. If this is nostalgic for you, check out a game called Screen Cheat. Split screen PvP shooter, where everyone's invisible, and the only way to figure out where your opponent is to look at their screen and try to figure it out based on their surroundings. Needing a controller pack in order to save a game. For a while, I didn't have one and just had to start a new game every time I turned the N64 on. Also, the Rumble pack, because your controller didn't just vibrate on its own. Not really a problem, but nowadays we don't get little booklets in the inside of the disc case that went over the controls, the backstory to the plot, the enemies and vehicles, etc. I used to enjoy reading those booklets on the way home from picking up a new game at Toys R Us. In the year of PS1 and PS2, not having a memory card sucked. Even if you did have one, they had a finite amount of space, so when you needed to make a new save, you'd have to delete something if you didn't want to buy another memory card. To add to this, games where there was no memory card manager when you came to make a save, so even if you would have happily deleted that old save of another game to make room for your new game, you couldn't, and so all your progress was lost needlessly. can't believe no one has yet mentioned losing the copy protection method or some component of it. I remember SimCity came with a book list with scrambled text that was only readable through a set of red filter glasses they gave you. Or what's the third word on the fourth paragraph, page 36 of the manual? Mucking with DOS memory management to make the game work. Pirating stuff was the norm. The worst thing a malware could do is to sneakily encrypt your hard disk. One half. But its author only wrote it to flex his programming skills, not to hold your data hostage or thwart the enemy's nuclear weapons program. Getting stuck in Dark Forces and literally can't play some other titles because you have a monochrome monitor. Anything above 320-240 with high frame rates were a pipe dream. In 3D games, loading Univ and editing Duke 3D's config file to play the game in 512-384, which looked like 640-480 on our monochrome 14 monitor, but could reach a stable 15 FPS on a 5x86 with 16 MB RAM. Getting the best upgrades you can get with your allowance and the game is still slow. Raging when the dreaded "this program requires Microsoft Windows" message appears. Despair upon the realization that Windows 95 will be required to play the newest and hottest titles, and your current PC is already obsolete. Downloading newer video drivers was a must to get fast 320-240 modes in DirectX. Haha, I remember my dad teaching me how to take lines out of config size or auto-exec bat to free up RAM so I could play Warcraft 2. Bro, forgot all about that. Getting my PS1 chipped and having a big list of games that my mum would have me pick through so she could buy them off the Dodgy guy. Thinking about it now though, people dealing with chipping PS1 and games were probably nerds, but I thought it was dodgy AF when I was young. Lag shooting on a 56k modem. Games like MechWarrior had awful net code that didn't account for latency. I just shake my head when people today claim 80 milliseconds is unplayable. You'll have no idea. Yeah, you have to shoot the empty space to kill a LOL. Swapping disks. Hours spent messing with load order and config size and auto-exec bat to tweak every last byte of extended and expanded RAM in the boot sequence. IRQs, cokes, dummy loads and 10-bit networking. No walkthroughs. Finding and downloading game demos at 2400 baud from a BBS. The hours spent on config size and auto-exec bat files is largely responsible for my 25+ year IT career. Saving and writing down save codes to resume your game progress. Getting a game Genie for chests and having the cheat code manuals. That your knockoff copy of Crash Bandicoot you bought for £1 off the market won't work in your chipped PlayStation. Or that there isn't enough space on the living room floor to spread the star map out for Frontier. I lead to having to smash a game in one full weekend as it had to go back to Blockbuster on Sunday night. Playing some Japanese RPG game with no English translation and no walkthrough at all. Still managed to clear it after few months. And suddenly you get a weird cartoon slideshow mid-game. I remember playing the original Legend of Zelda. That game is hard as frick. I've played other NES games through emulators and Switch Online eShop. Sega games, hard as frick. Nintendo, hard as frick. Heck, growing up and playing PS2 and Xbox games were difficult. These days if you get frustrated enough, by the time you start searching for a walkthrough, not only has someone already completed most of what you're playing, but also posted and wrote a detailed walkthrough. Old school games are hard. Some didn't have maps, saves, difficulty levels, or lives. Most Nintendo games were hard as frick. Like, I would rather play Dark Souls than the speeder bike level of Battletoads. The first Mega Man would wreck you. Loading times. You ever play a game on a cassette tape 20-minute load time? Get game over, another 20-minute load time. Well, the believability of the graphics. Every new generation of consoles broke that reality of realism, but in the 90s that crap looked real good. Obviously the side-scroller games like Rayman and Commander Keen were cartoony, but games like Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces, 007 GoldenEye, Star Wars Pod Racer, Lost, Ocarina of Time, and Tony Hawk Pro Skater captivated us with its 3D graphics. In some way we knew they could eventually get better, but it was near impossible to imagine until a new console came out and defy what had come before. An added bonus was getting a pretty dope Game Chex Quest in our cereal box. Sometimes, some cereal companies would just slap a full butt games in the cereal box. That was dope. Me and my dad got stuck on the last level of Jurassic Park for Sega Genesis. The raptors were attacking you and the only way to beat them was to shoot the T-Rex skeleton and have it fall on them. We did not figure this out on our own. My dad started calling people until he found someone either at Sega or the game company who told us the secret. There was no internet to look it up. Not necessarily games, but reading, writing, CDs, DVDs. Remember when your computer had like, yeah, let's pick randomly 3 of the 4 combinations of being able to read, write, CD, DVD. 3D games in the mid-90s, graphics, Metal Gear Solid, GoldenEye, etc. We were blown away, but most kids now would be horrified. Not really a problem, I guess, just a different perspective. Absolutely, GoldenEye was a beautiful game. What blew me away was Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Going from Link's Awakening on OG Game Boy to 3D, glorious color in it was really something. Someone trips over the cords of the controller while their friend is playing and then the console flies off the shelf and sometimes gets totally unplugged from the wall, ending the game, which you could not save. It wasn't popular, Luke, it was popular, but it was popular for nerds and children. There was still a huge stigma with gaming and being another. Even among kids, the ones who played video games were seen as dweebs and less popular than the athletic kids. Now, a kid I went to high school with that was an athlete made $50 million streaming video games. Physical media in general. Today's generation won't ever understand the pain of dropping a PS1 disc 2 of Final Fantasy VII causing me to be unable to advance in the game. In the really early 90s, maybe late 80s, you'd occasionally get a cassette tape of games from friends and no way to know what games were on there, or where they started, or even what they were about and how to interact with them. You'd diligently load each game and then make a note of the counter where it finished loading. Then you'd randomly press keys to work out what did what, and what the point of the game was. Price drops weren't as big and as frequent as today. That's why you took your time picking up a game, as it had to last you months. Unlike these days where games can be so cheap people end up with huge backlogs of unplayed games. Also, depending on the year and if you had a computer with access to the internet, you couldn't just go online and found a complete guide or walkthrough video completely free, so getting stuck in a game was definitely a thing. My mate accidentally poured Stella into my SNES. Afterwards, any vibration would cause it to turn itself off. I would have to frantically save when I heard someone coming up the stairs because the moment they reached the top, dead. So, sometimes you have to blow into a cartridge to make it work. And find that sweet spot with the NES front loader. One issue that's maybe taken for granted today is how to connect your gaming console in a way that you can play it. Many TVs didn't have audio-video cable lines, and consoles required it. Usually you'd have to go out of your way to purchase an adapter or sometimes 2 adapters. One to allow for a coaxial in the first place. It had like these 2 fork prongs that had to be screwed in, with a screwdriver, onto the TV. Then you could take that adapter and connect it to your adapter for the console. If you had a console and no coaxial adapter, and had to use the audio and video cables, then you'd have to come up with interesting ways to connect it, such as connecting it to the VCR, if you had one, and then turning on the TV, changing it to the VCR channel, then selecting that it's a AV line. I think, looking back compared to today, it's a lot of effort compared to just HDMI and go. Speaking of wires, there was no wireless. You had to sit within 5-ish feet of the console, like, right up in front of the TV, and usually that would mean sitting on the carpet, on the floor between the coffee table and the TV itself. Your miles obviously vary depending on location and parents, etc. But just giving an idea of the impact of wireless and how big of a deal that really was. Not sure if they still do it, but some video game stores like EB Games required you to be a certain age to walk around the store. I think it was 16. I remember my friend was like 15 and tried to sneak in like Solid Snake, hiding between shelves and boxes. Also, buying a video game magazine that did not come with a demo disc was deflating. Demo discs were amazing back then. Playing the same opening levels over and over because you were broke as crap. So having access to a half dozen opening levels was amazing. The commitment. You had to dedicate time to gaming to actually beat something. You had to hog the TV from your family for extended periods of time while you had old people yelling at you to get outside cause it's beautiful out and you're wasting your life. You had to set up the archaic wires, blow in the cartridges, mess with the bent controller wire, and turn everything on in a set way in order to even start the game. Then, you had family and pets getting in the way while playing, where the slightest nudge to the system itself, mostly SNES, would shut the whole thing down. And God help you if you didn't save recently. I spent many hours of my early life playing games, beating them, and feeling a huge sense of accomplishment. Not because of the difficulty or content, but because I overcame every other obstacle in my life, sometimes including sleep, food, bathroom usage, or actual human interaction, to accomplish such a simple, useless task. Kids these days will never fathom that level of commitment, and the older generations look at us in such contempt and disgust that we wasted our youth. I'm here to tell you, it was worth it, or at least that's what my inner child still tells me when I look back at how much time I wasted. Batteries dying on your Game Boy at an inopportune moment, or when your little brother thinks it's funny to use your Master Ball in Pokemon Red to catch a Magikarp then save your game. I actually still have the Game Boy and all my games to show both my boys when they are a little bit older. I can't wait to see their reaction and record a video of it. I'm expecting them to tap the screen or look at the picture and be all confused, like what the heck is this? Your little brother thinks it's funny to use your Master Ball in Pokemon Red to catch a Magikarp then save your game. I think murder is legally justified in this situation. You could call Nintendo and talk to an expert and they'd walk you through something you were stuck on. I once called and was told how to get to the negative world in Super Mario Bros. 1. As a kid, those game experts had the dream job. That we all had slow fricking modems hooked up to dial-up. This made some of multiplayer games like Unreal or Quake extremely frustrating to play. Your character was always like the $6 million man. Super slow motion that was sketched out as frick. Kai wire. Did I shoot yet? Holy frick. Box art and rear pictures on the box were the only way we could get a feeling for what the game would be like. Many people got burned thinking the box art was how the game would look like, and it often didn't. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.